Welcome guys to my new video. In this video I need to talk about the desktop case. So first of all, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and let's start our video. What is a desktop case? A computer case for any type of computer is sometimes called the chassis and house of the power supply, motherboard, processor, memory modules, hard drive, and other drives. A computer case can be a tower case, a desktop case that lies flat on a desk, an all-in-one case used with an all-in-one computer, or a mobile case used with laptops and tablets. A computer case lies flat and sometimes serves double duty as a monitor stand. Now let's see the ports used with a desktop case and mobile computers. First, let's start with the VGA. VGA is the Video Graphic Array port. Is used as a female port that transmits the analog video. We all see this, the VGA in our desktop computer. Second, the S video port. The S video port is a 4-pin or 7-pin round video port, sometimes used to connect to a television. The 7-pin port is shown on the left. The 4-pin port is missing the extra pins in the middle and is the more common type. Now, a DVI or the digital video interface port, it transmits a digital or analog video. It's supporting the input and the output devices. This is the DVI or the digital video interface. Now an HDMI or the high definition multimedia interface. It's a port that transmits a digital video and audio and is often used to connect to home theater equipment. This is the HDMI. And we have also the display port, like this. It transmits digital video and audio and is slowly replacing the VGA and the DVI ports on personal computer. Now the Thunderbolt port, it transmits video, data, and power on the same port and cable, and is popular with the Apple computer. The port is shaped the same as the DisplayPort and is compatible with DisplayPort devices. This is the Thunderbolt port. It's used with the Apple computer. Now the network port is used by a network cable to connect the wired network. This is the network port. Now the audio port, like this. This is the audio port, also called the sound port. Is used for the microphone, the audio in, the audio out, stereo, and etc. This type of audio port can transmit analog or digital data. If you have one audio cable to connect to a speaker or earbuds, plug it into the lime green sound port in the middle of the 3 ports. The microphone uses the pink port. The green port is for the audio cable, and the pink port, this is used for the microphone. This is the audio ports. Also, we all see this audio port in our computer. Now let's talk about the SPDIF or the Sony Philips Digital Interface. Also, it's a sound port. It's connected to an external home theater audio system, providing digital audio output and the best signal quality. When connected to a fiber optic cable, the port is called an optical connector. This is the SPDIF or the Sony Philips Digital Interface, the sound port. Now the USB. USB or the Universal Serial Bus Port is a multi-purpose input and output port that comes in several sizes and is used by many different devices, including printer, mice, keyboard, scanner, external hard drives, and flash drives. Some USB ports are faster than others. This is the USB port. Now the Firewire port, also called an IEEE 1394 port, is used to high-speed multimedia devices such as a digital camcorder. Now look at the external SATA or the eSATA port is used by an external hard drive or other device using the eSATA interface. The eSATA is faster than the Firewire. Now the PS2 port is a round 6-pin port used by keyboard and mouse. The ports look alike but are not interchangeable. This is the PS2 port. An older serial port, sometimes called DB9 port, is a 9-pin male port used on the older computers. It has been mostly replaced by the USB ports. You will see a serial port on a router, for example, where the port is used to connect the router to a device. A technician can be used to monitor and manage the router. This is the serial port. Now the parallel port, like this, also called LPT port, is a 25-pin male port used by the older printers. This older port has been replaced by the USB port also. And finally, the modem port is used to connect the dial-up phone lines computers to a computer. A modem port looks like the network port but is not a white. This is all about the port that will this port is in the computer case. You can see this port in the computer case. Now let's talk about what we have inside the desktop case. Inside the desktop case we have the power supply. This is the power supply. We have also the optical DVD and CD drive. We have also the power cord. We have the processor. This is the processor. And we have two hard drive and the motherboard, the front of case, the memory. This is the memory slots, and the SATA data cable. This is the SATA data cable in red. This is what we have inside the desktop case. Now let's talk about the motherboard. The motherboard, also called the main board or the system board or the MOBO, is the largest and most important circuit board in the computer. The motherboard contains a socket to hold the processor or the CPU. The Central Processing Unit or the CPU, also called the processor or the microprocessor, does most of the processing of the data and instructions for the entire system. Because the CPU generates heat, a fan and heat sink might be installed on top to keep it cool. A heat sink consists of the metal fans that draw heat away from a component. The fan and heat sink together are called the processor cooler. This is the motherboard in our computer, and this is the part of the motherboard. It contains the CPU, the four the memories, it contains the CPI slot, etc. This is the motherboard. Now the expansion card. A motherboard has an expansion slots to be used by the expansion card. An expansion card, also called an adapter card, is a circuit board that provides more ports than those provided by the motherboard. This is the expansion card. And this is the port of the expansion card. Now the memory modules. A desktop motherboard has memory slots called DIMM, or the dual inline memory module slots to hold memory modules. The memory, also called RAM or the random access memory, is temporary storage for the data and instructions as they are being processed by the CPU. The video card also contains some RAM chips for the video memory. Let's see the memory in our computer. We have the one installed DIMM. This is in green, and the three empty DIMM slots. This one in blue, in black, and another in blue. This is the memory in our computer. Now the hard drives and other drives. A system might have one or more hard drives, an optical drive, a tape drive, or for a really old system, a floppy drive. A hard drive, also called a hard disk drive or HDD, is permanent storage used to hold data and programs. For example, the Windows 8 operating system and the application are installed on the hard drive. All drives in the system are installed in a stock of drive base at the front of the case. Each drive has two connections for cable. The power cable connect to the power supply, and another cable used for data and instructions connect to the motherboard. This is all about the hard drive. Now the power supply. A computer power supply, also known as a power supply unit or the PSU, is a box installed in a corner of the computer case that receives and converts the house current so that components inside the case and used. This is the power supply in our computer. We can all see the power supply in the computer case. If you open the computer case, you can see it. The power cable can connect to and supply power to the motherboard, expansion card, and drives. This is the power supply in our computer and why it's important. The most power supplies have a dual voltage selector that switch on the back of the computer case, like this. Dual voltage selector switch. This is in red. Now let's talk about the ATX form factor. ATS, or the Advanced Technology Extended, is the most commonly used form factor today. It is a non-proprietary industry originally developed by the Intel in 1995 and has undergone several revisions since then. The original ATX form factor for cases and case fan blowing the air into the case, but early revisions to the form factor had fans blowing air out of the case. Blowing air out of the case does a better job to keep the system cool. This is the importance of the ATX form. And this is the ATX form in our computer. Now let's see the power supply connectors. And let's start with the 20-pin P1 connector. It's the mainboard power connector used in the early ATX systems. This is the 20-pin P1 connector. To the 24-pin P1 connector, also called the 20 plus 4-pin connector, is the mainboard power connector used today. The 20 plus 4 pin P1 connector has 4 pins removed, so the connector can fit into a 20 pin P1 motherboard connector. Now the 4 pin 12 volt connector is a auxiliary motherboard connector which is used for the extra 12 volt power to the processor. This is the 8 pin 12 volt connector is a auxiliary motherboard connector which is used for the extra 12 volt power to the processor, providing more power than the older 4-pin auxiliary connector. And this is also the 4-pin Molex connector is used for older IDE drives and some newer SATA drives. It can provide 5 volt and 12 volt to the drive. Now the 15-pin STA power connector is used for STA drives. It can provide plus 3.3 volt, plus 5 volt and plus 12 volt, although plus 3.3 is seldom used. Now the 4-pin Birch connector is used by the older floppy disk drive FDD. And this is the PCIe or the 6-pin connector provides an extra plus 12 volt for the high-end video cards using the PCI Express or the version 1 standard. This is in the red is the PCIe 8-pin connectors provides an extra plus 12 volt for the high-end video card using the PCI Express version 2. This is the version 1 and this is the version 2. The version 1 have 6 pin and the version 2 have 8 pin. Now the PCIe 6 and 8 pin connector is used by the high-end video card using the PCIe times 16 slots to provide extra voltage to the card and can accommodate a 6-hole or 8-hole port. To get the 8-pin connector, combine both the 6-pin and the 2-pin connectors. This is all about the power supply connectors in our computer case. Now let's solve this to exercise, and exercise number 1. How is the best way to determine if a cable inside a computer is a data and instruction cable or a power cable? The power cable are thicker, have the few pin, and connect to the power supply unit, and it's often with the color-coded wires, but the data cables are thinner and have more pins and connect to the motherboard or storage devices. Checking connectors and tracing the cables can also help identify its type. This is the difference between the power cable and the data cables. Exercise 2. Which port do you use to connect a docking station to a laptop? Write the answer of this question in the comment section. And this is for all for today. Thank you for watching and see you later.